Good morning. Welcome to Sherry Ewell's Art. Today I am going to be working on a piece of Nara synthetic paper that is specifically formulated for alcohol ink. A lot of you alcohol ink artists typically use Yupo paper. I found Nara about 2 years ago and it's really the best. It's fabulous. I'm going to be doing a tutorial on making some red roses with some greenery and some wisteria. And so if you would like to have more information on actually alcohol ink on canvas, I do have a couple of videos that are out. If you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button and then going and following me on Instagram, also Sherry Ewell's Art on Instagram, and then also my website, sherryewellsart.com. Anyway, let's get started with this tutorial. I'm going to be using an airbrush like this, and typically sometimes I will use a straw and use my own breath. I'm out in my studio in the garage. I've got plenty of good ventilation. The paints that I'm going to be using today are from Bria Reese. This one is called Geranium. That's going to be the main color for the roses. And then this one is Berry, just Berry. And that's going to be for the wisteria little dots that I use. And then I'm going to be using Tim Holtz, Ranger inks. These are two Ranger inks in green. One is called Lettuce and the other one is called Botanical. And that'll be for the foliage. And so let me just turn you here where you can see, and we will get started. I use a wet on wet technique. I'm gonna do 2 roses here and then 2 roses here, kind of offset on each other, and then greenery behind. So I just use a dropper, a medicine dropper like this with 91% alcohol. And I do a wet on wet where I wet my paper first, just a couple, 2 or 3 drops, and then 1 to 2 drops of the ink is all you need. And then I start from the side and just kind of get my overall outline of where I want that rose to be. And I'm pretty close to the paper, as you can see. So I'm just drying out that alcohol. And then I go into the center. And if I don't like the way that the ink has spread out, I'll just add a little bit more alcohol, push that alcohol into the ink, because I kind of don't like those little fingery bits that happen. There we go. I like that petal there. Let's do this on this side. She's not as big. Oh, my light just went out because I just shut my garage door. All the guys are out doing yard work this morning because there's a big storm coming in Oklahoma. So they're trying to get all the yard work done. So it was very, very noisy. I had to shut my garage door. And now my light went off. That's all right, you can still see. Okay, I'm just pushing the air. It's basically hitting the paper here, but it's just drying out that edge of the alcohol and the ink. And here I don't particularly like this side either. Just add more alcohol and push that alcohol into the ink, and then you can push it back out. Push it into the ink. And make that center, because then once this dries, we'll come back in and do some detail work on the center. Even this rose here, I'm not particularly fond of how all of that looks right there. So I'm just going to come with some alcohol on that side. Do the same thing on that I did with this over here. Push that alcohol into that petal. There we go. I like that. There we go. And again, this little, you just kind of, sometimes when you're not in a hurry necessarily, but sometimes you can spray a little bit too hard in one area and you get those little fingers that kind of jut out. And I don't particularly like those. So I'm gonna try to be a little bit more intentional. There we are. And sometimes we need to dry that ink. So I'll get my hair dryer out. I'm holding it a good bit away from the actual rose itself, just to dry that ink and that alcohol. Okay, now we're just gonna let that dry and hang out, and then we're gonna come right over here and do 2 other roses. Again, just pick up with your medicine dropper, a little bit of alcohol, about 8 or 10 little drops of alcohol, and 3 drops of ink. Again, I'm starting at the edge, drying some of that alcohol off, just to spread my ink around the way I want it to, and then coming in to make the center of the rose. That was a much better one. That was a much better one. Okay, I don't have to do anything with that. Then we'll come over here, 9 or 10 drops of alcohol. 1, 2, 3 drops of ink, and in with our airbrush. You just airbrush that a little bit more. And we're gonna come in and just do circles on the outside of where you dropped your alcohol, just to dry it up a little bit. And then we start to see that it's drying. Okay, and now we just start in the middle and rotate it out. Okay, I got some of those little fingery looking things that I don't care for. There we go. There we are. And the wonderful thing about Nara paper versus Yupo, this is a very deep saturated red color, and like, well, I can't lift it up because it's still wet, but right here, I'm not particularly fond of this little area right here. I don't know, you probably can't see that, but I'm just gonna go in with some alcohol on my paper towel, and I'm just going to wipe that away because I don't really care for that. And there will not be any residue of that saturated ink color. With Nara paper, it wipes right off to white, which in the full spectrum and the full scale of things, this is all going to be filled in with green and greenery anyway. So it doesn't really matter how clean I get these roses because it's all going to be filled in with, greenery. Anywho. Okay. I can't really lift it up right because it will drip, but there's our beginnings of our roses, and then the next video that I present will be the greenery. Come back for part 2.